is sort of meant to cheer people up. At the beginning of the pandemic, I had, sort of like worried for a little bit, like, oh, there's all these essential workers and medical, really important people in the world, and as I'm teaching art online, had some struggle with, right, like, I don't know, where does art fit in and what's the value of it? Yeah, we had some good conversations. I teach art at the University of Lynchburg, which went all online. But I think, yeah, the conversations with the students is that maybe it's more important right now in the middle of the pandemic when we're so isolated otherwise. Yeah, and the art, my art is very humor-based. It's very absurd. You'll find recognizable objects, cabbages, brooms, various cleaning utensils. Making art, I think, is maybe even more important in the middle of this very isolated time. It's a bit of a conundrum because isolation is not at all conducive to making work. So it's been a little bit of a struggle, but over the last couple months, I've made some new pieces, which I'm excited about. Yeah, so the motion is really important. Obviously, this piece really captures the humor and absurdity of a lot of my works. But this one, once it's like activated kinetically, that takes on a whole other life. I am piecing together a lot of different objects to create this. Again, just as the brooms themselves or the mop is kind of free from its traditional role, a lot of the industrial components in here are either way overbuilt or totally used for not their intended purpose. So we have this bendy gas pipe here, plumbing fixture. This is all tied together with a ball and hitch. And then I think sort of like a lot of the kinetic components are sort of raw and open, so you can kind of see the internal structure, how it was built. But yeah, there's play in that as well, even in how I'm creating it. The other thing I'm interested with these pieces is that, there's various levels of engagement that can happen. I think initially anyone can appreciate a spinning broom twirling around or a mop twirling around. But I also like the fact that, depending on your life experience, you might recognize some of these objects for what they are, or you just might have this like insane curiosity or wonder about what is going on here. So yeah, part of this stems from my grandfather. Growing up, he had a salvage yard, so full of piles of all kinds of unexpected objects, rusty metal next to clean clawfoot bathtubs. And so, in a way, I'm trying to recreate that experience for the viewer. So unexpected combinations of objects, and also that curiosity. What was this object originally created for? What is it being used for now? Just as you would find very unlikely combinations in a junkyard. Yeah, so this, it's about half and half in the show. I think I have 4 new pieces and 5 older pieces that were created before the pandemic. What I found interesting is that as the theme of a lot of these, obviously the brooms, the cleaning supplies and cleaning tools, that the work has kind of taken on a whole new meaning now with the pandemic. So this piece, not for sweeping, although originally made a few years ago, way before the pandemic, I'm interested that this very much speaks to social distancing, these two bodies sort of awkwardly floating 6 feet apart. But yeah, I like that about the work. The work is open-ended and it's meant to be. It's meant to activate the imagination of the viewer to recall their own memories or experiences, either using these objects or, yeah, the work is meant to start a dialogue with the viewer. I'm very interested in this like extreme juxtaposition of some of these more domestic items, brooms, mops, cabbages, and then these very industrial components. But yeah, so I'm interested in this extreme juxtaposition and also the conversation or reversal of work and play. So I really love the idea of these brooms, which are normally downward, very work-heavy objects, kind of released from that role and dancing around in the air as their title and marking signifies. These brooms are not for sweeping, and so that became sort of a theme in a lot of my work, that extreme reversal or juxtaposition of objects in places or doing things that they normally don't do. So I'll just let it run. A lot of the pieces I think speak for themselves, which is one thing I love. But this piece, as many, started in I found this red guy at the junkyard in Greensboro. And a lot of my work just, starts with finding these objects and thinking about how I'm going to use them. In this case, this theme of cleaning utensils, what do they call it? Cleaning tools? Brooms and mops. So in this case, thinking of turning this into a sweeping machine. This one's a little bit unlike the rest because the other ones are very much defying their function, dancing around, or otherwise, this one actually is completing its task of mopping, dust mopping the floor. So a lot of my decisions are formal. Even in the junkyard, seeing these like bright red or bright blue plumbing fixtures, that's initially what sparks my interest in the object. And then from there, even the objects that I'm choosing to pair them with can also help dictate the decisions I make next, or what I choose to activate. In this case, this also bright red dust mop. There's a lot of problem solving that comes along the way, and I think that's part of even the concept of this piece. Such a simple act, but all of the weight and kind of like very much overkill thinking that went behind creating this piece to just repetitively do something very simple. But yeah, so over the summer I became a member of Artspace, which has allowed me to create a lot of these pieces. Most recently finished my graduate degree from UNCG in Greensboro, and so not having access to all of the machines and tools that I did in grad school partly put a halt in my art production, and so Artspace has allowed me to get back into that, get back into making I steam bent the handles here out of real broom handles. So, I think I said earlier, but I think, I hope, that ultimately, the purpose of my work is to sort of cheer people up, or that they find connection to different parts of the piece, but also just, could be laughter. I think there's definitely meditative quality to them, so people just experiencing formal qualities, either the line or the color, and very whimsical, linear elements in a lot of the work. Yeah, people always ask me about the cabbage. I love the immediacy and accessibility of the cabbage. I think it's something everyone recognizes. And then, as per theme in my work, it's just a complete, I think, juxtaposition and unexpected place. So I use the cabbage a lot. There's very industrial settings. In this case, I call this the cabbage roller coaster because at the end of these conveyor belts is this pile of cabbages. And so it just sort of poses the question, I think again, like other works, just prompting the viewer's imagination, where did this come from? I think oftentimes, it's something we overlook or take for granted. Just the source of where anything comes from. And so that's part of, I think, the curiosity and, again, junkyard juxtaposition of objects. I also love the idea that you can empathize with the cabbage. I think, similarly to the mop piece, and some of the other broom pieces, there's a personification that happens. This very much so. With this piece, I know for myself, I am always putting myself in place of the cabbage or thinking about the journey that these cabbages have been on. Formally, the cabbage is also just beautiful. I love the color. Casting cabbages is something I do a lot in my work, and so I think even just like seeing the metal cabbage next to the living or fresh cabbage is another, I think, interesting juxtaposition, something ephemeral that's going to rot maybe in the gallery next to a very solid or long-lasting cast aluminum cabbage. Yeah, at one point in grad school I had moldy cabbages and rusty metal, and there was this really interesting kind of conversation that those objects had. So yeah, I think I'm also just interested in like the very literal or material qualities of the cabbage. So before the pandemic, when I submitted a proposal for the show, I really wanted to do a collaborative piece with the community. A lot of my work is meant to be interactive. I've made a swing set before. I've made a lot of pieces where you sit in. So a lot of that had to change because of the pandemic, obviously. I had an idea with these caution signs to somehow, I basically just got like 15 caution signs and was like, oh, this will be a great piece to collaborate with people. And then, I don't know, I'm still just having trouble figuring out how to engage community members in a safe way under the pandemic. And so I had this idea to involve my students. And so, yeah, I have a class of 9 students in one of my design classes, and each of the students took on a project that is in some way their response to the pandemic. So you'll see those scattered throughout the exhibit.